láyé olúgbọ́n mo ké borùn méje ẹ ò máa kọ yí lórin láyé àrẹ̀sà mo ké borùn mẹ́fà ẹ ò máa kọ yí lórin láyé ìsẹ̀yìn èmi ra kókò mo ra rán mo ra sányán bàbá sọ àfọ̀lẹ́ ló lè pélé.
Hello everyone, my name is Adiyemo Adegbemiga Gani and I welcome you to my new Yoruba Abrahamic YouTube video. Today I want to talk about the Yoruba and the African depth origin of the word Israel. Every single African legacy evolving around the name long before everything changes to what we see of it today. But to understand this very topic, we shall deeply dive into pre-colonial historical facts beyond Abrahamic book, likewise like the Quran and the Bible. And then we will further start by defining what Israel basically was by definition from the Eurocentric lens, long before the Europeans and the Pale Arab invaded Africa, then politicalizes the name to fit their own respective religion or political agenda, which has lasted to today. And furthermore, I will now define what the Oyo, better known as the Israelite or Yeshira Hill. They are linked to the Yoruba who have Ile-Ife in antiquity directly and indirectly. So let's quickly jump into this topic. First of all, the Israel really was a name of a man, a name of an African figure, not a land, not a country, not a place, not a region, let alone what we have today. So don't be cajoled by things that you see today. The name Israel was never meant to be a land of anybody, or because it's actually a name of a man who is not from Middle East. That is another thing you should also consider. And this man by 100% was even an African, because the timeline of this man on earth had to do as a period when the African continent or the universe was uniformly dominated by black people by default. So it was never, the whole story of Abrahamic history started and ended in Africa, and they were all black African individuals. So reason to why all Abrahamic prophets throughout the Bible, throughout the Quran, from Revelation 1 to 14, Yeshua being black, Moses being black, Solomon being black, David being, all of them were all black individuals. So their direct ancestor who gave birth to this nation of the divine ones was also a black man. So I don't know why you now see white people there today. That is called for reality. And this African man we are now talking about, his real Hebrew term, or should I say his Hebrew name, what he was known for, he had an 100% Yoruba name, better understood today as Akobi. Akobi is a typical Yoruba name given to a man, but it's not a direct name. It's more of a descriptive name to describe the gender, the status of an individual in a family lineage. And the word Akobi among the Yoruba basically means the first child. That is the direct word of it. But within the Yoruba people, among themselves, they has a better way of using that word to mean things further beyond what you can read in paper. Among the Yoruba, Akobi can as well be defined or be described as someone who is greater or surpasses the other one. Like any Shiwaju, Akobi ni Olu Omolo, Akobi lolo fije. If they call you an Akobi in Yoruba and you have elderly ones, they are still basically saying heaven favor you than your elderly one. Akobi lomo hije, Olu Omolo je. The Yoruba people can understand and testify to what I'm saying. So even though the term Akobi basically means the first child, it can also be used as the most favored or the son, the pillar of the family, someone who does it all. So that is what Akobi means. And if you now check out what this Akobi means, because it's very common for people to say that no, Akobi is just a coincidence, that is not a Yoruba word. For an instant, for you to know that it's never a coincidence, you will realize that Akobi, I will go and I will touch on that later. Let us now go into the reason why they said the man was given the name Israelite from the Bible, because there are so many misconceptions relating to what really happened and what prompted him to later be known as Israel. From the Bible described him that he was initially known as Akobi, from the Torah view of it. But because he wrestled, physically had a feast with an angel till the dawn morning, then he was now later renamed as a sort of a blessing. He was renamed from Israel to was renamed from Jacob to Israel. Jacob in Yoruba can also be referenced in Oju Akobilo, Oju Akobi, or Oyaraju Akobilo. All of it are still evolving within the logic of being blessed by his brother or his counterpart, which is why I said the name Akobi, aside from the fact that it has an 100% Yoruba meaning, it also resonated with the direct legacy of this figure in the Abrahamic book as well. And the reason why he was later referred, let me even touch on something, because commonly they always say this Jacob fought with an angel. Like I continue to say, if you go by the direct word of most of these Abrahamic writings, you always get it wrong, because most of it, the way Yoruba uses their word, they use it from an idiomatic lens of it, approach of it, or perspective. The fighting can also be referenced to having a discussion that resulted to an argument, not necessarily until you raise your fist and start wrestling or brawling on the floor like people make these scenes to look like in today's writing. If you even go by the view of the common Eurocentric view of how they describe angel, they often portray angel as a gigantic figure. So how can a small Jacob of his little boy be fighting a giant and he later beats the angel? It doesn't align with common sense. In a nutshell, nevertheless, what they are trying to say is that because that Jacob or the Akobi or whatever from the Abrahamic lens is a divine person, which can be also referred among the Yoruba as Eniti Orishada, Eniti Oloda Shada, a special being which heaven appointed. That is what Orisha means. And the angel from the Yoruba lens can also be referred to Irumole, Orun Imole, a divine entity that descended down from heaven. That angel descended down from heaven, and they were answering to the Almighty, which is Eledumare, directly and indirectly. So it's fair to say that an Orisha was having an encounter with an Irumole. After some times of maybe debate or wrestle or whatever, then one succumbed to it, and the other angel, maybe the Irumole put him to test, and it surpasses the expectations of the angel. Then the angel now blessed him as a sort of a gift that from today you shall now be known as Oyasheriola, which was later abbreviated to Israel or Israelite today. For those who don't know, Yasherela was derived from Oyasheriola. Oyasheriola among the Yoruba, from the Yoruba interpretation, means multiple or groups. That is Oya. We also use it in direct Yoruba like Ogunwawo Yaya or Omi Yawonu Lienie, an high volume of water just flow into the water. It's also is always in reference to something big or multiple or plenty. Ojo omide yawonu agbara ojo yawo adugbo. You understand? Yoruba people can understand or testify to what I'm saying. So Oya means something that is big or multiple or group. And Sheri in Yoruba means to go back and forth. Musheri Wonule, Musheri Sita, he headed out. He migrated from one place to another, changing spots from one region, and that is what best describes this group of people. So when Israel, better known as Akobi of a Yoruba figure, was later named as Oyasheriola, the Israelite, is a kind of a reference to how great his children or he was, because later this figure now had multiple children, and the Oyasheriola had to do with how his children was never had a place to call their home, because their original home is in West Africa, not North Africa, not the North Africa where they temporarily dwell among the Egyptians, which are the Kemet. That is what it basically means. So this man known as Israel, how do I know, or how can we link it to a Yoruba person or as a figure like many people might tend not to know today? Akobi is a typical Yoruba nickname, which in Yoruba basically resonated to what actually went down regarding to the legacy of this figure, because they were of two, Esau and Jacob, and the Almighty favored Jacob, a man known as Akobi. The Almighty favored him better. So the name Akobi is in reference to how he was made to be greater than his other sibling, or should I say his twin brother. That was what it came out. That would be, like I said, all these names, Abrahamic's name, were nicknames that best describe their adventure in their respective lifetime. Many might argue that it's just a coincidence that Yoruba people have a word known as Akobi, that it might not necessarily mean the Abrahamic Akobi, better known as Israel. This is what you need to know if you are being sincere. Let me give you a very good example. Like in Yoruba, a machete in Yoruba is called Ada. That same Ada, A-D-A, the Igbos tribe in Yoruba land, they also have the same name known as Ada. The Igbo people has the name Ada, but what makes us understand that is a coincidence of name is that they have different meaning. I hope I'm making sense. The Yoruba Ada means machete. The Yoruba Igbo names is actually a name for an individual person, not a machete. So by then, it's fair to say that that is a coincidence. But when we are talking about same name with the same meaning of different tribe, that means there is a direct link. So that is far from coincidence. That is the fact you need to know. A coincidence of name always resulted to different in meaning, but a direct correlation in name also always have the same meaning, the same interpretation, and always define the reason, the origin of that name. So a better way to now say this Akobi name is actually a typical Yoruba figure directly from Ile-Ife, even though he never lived or wasn't popular among the Ife Yoruba history, is because every seed, every children, descendants, direct bloodline that now came out, that sprang out of him, were all into Ile-Ife practices by 100%. It's because they follow the legacy of their forefather, which is Akobi. Now the name is Akobi, and the children that came out of him were 100% into Isheshe tradition. So there is no doubt they are all Yorubas by 100%. Like the 8-day circumcision of the Bible and the birth ceremony, which till now in Yoruba land we still call Ikomo Jomejo. After giving birth to a child till today, you don't need to read it in a law. It's naturally part of our culture. You have to wait for 8 days before you start doing any ceremonial thing, like the circumcision, like the shaving of the hair, giving birth. And these are legacies of these Akobi because they were actually Yorubas. Likewise, in the case of the Ifa oracle, we know Ifa started from Ile-Ife, for God's sake. And this Ifa now became every single thing which this Akobi, better known as Israel, enjoying in doing. Through they were Ifa practicing how to speak with the Almighty, became a source of guidance for every seed that now later came out of Akobi, and it was all owned by villagers, kingdoms, and even prophets and Yorisha, because they were all from Ile-Ife. If you are not from Ile-Ife, where Ifa originated from directly as a pure blood, you can't really go in, you can't really be still practicing the Isheshe. So thousands of years later, every seed of Akobi was still into the Ifa of Orunmila, which basically still indicated that they were directly from Ile-Ife. Then we also have the time of the way every prophet of that book too continuously prostrate, how to greet their elderly ones from that one. These are Yoruba tradition in the globe. The world knows Only the Yoruba people will lie down flat to greet their elderly. The women will kneel down. They will prostrate on the floor. It is their natural. This was how Akobi descendant, his children, because they inherited that Yoruba culture from their ancestors. Likewise, they prostrate to the kings, Baale, which is better known as Baal. I don't want to go about that. The European term Baal to a sort of two-one demon. I want one more if I go into that one. And likewise, the Adihare, the children of Akobi, were also in the divinating lane, divinating past foot of legacy of their ancestors. They as well became a divine individuals, and Orisha later on. They are also into putting on like Omishore, which is better known from Ondo ancestry. He put on the Oduduwa head veil, Adihare. All these things are directly from Yoruba. So if I'm saying Akobi or Israel or everything were from Ile-Ife, this is exactly what I mean, because everything since then, since thousands of years till today, can still be found among the Yoruba people in Ile-Ife. So it's never a sweet thing or a self-proclaiming thing. The reality is there for those who actually want to go for the truth. And if you want more of this, I've detailed this in my book carefully. How they move from one location within Africa, how the location names continues to change. When the European came, I detail everything. So you can consider buying my book if you want more of these full details. In a nutshell, it is fair for me to say that Akobi was actually a Yoruba man. The man known as your today's Israel, which the European now borrowed his name to build a land, was actually a Yoruba man directly from Ile-Ife, even though the man stayed in North Africa, particularly in Kush land, not in Egypt. He stayed in Kush land. I put the details too in my book, how he left Yoruba land to go and settle down in Kush land, how his children, some of them migrated to Egypt. I put it in my books. So interestingly, today the Yoruba traditional historians still argue as well among themselves about this deity among themselves known as Akobi. I hope the Yoruba people understand that there is a argument presently in Yoruba land, and it has always been that there is a figure known as Akobi. Among Yoruba indigenous historians, some group of Yoruba argues that Akobi was the only child which Oduduwa first had. Oduduwa in Abrahamic book is King David. They say Akobi was the first child Oduduwa first had before they later gave birth to his 12 children, who now became Obas across today's southwest of Nigeria. Some Yoruba indigenous historians argue that Akobi is an unexisting figure among the Yoruba history that and I get where both sides are coming from. Those who argue that Akobi does not exist in Yoruba history or from Ile-Ife, they are right based on the fact that Akobi legacy does not lie at Ile-Ife. His legacy evolves around Kush land. That same Kush land now became where Oduduwa himself came from. The same related Kush land became where Orunmila came from. They all came from North Africa to their land of origin before they became person. So every person, Moses, the Israelite journey, like it is said that they went out, is all how the Yoruba people left North Africa to come and integrate back into West Africa, in today's Yoruba land, particularly part of the Ondo and Benin Edo people. They were all the Israelite. The Igala were part of it. The Igala didn't learn their Yoruba. Some of the Ishekiri, they are part of it. They all came, they had ties with Egypt. So they all came in group migrants. So the Israelite thing, they all came from North Africa. So each one of them always have to come back to Ile-Ife collectively, because today's Ile-Ife in ancient day was not limited to today's Nigeria. Ile-Ife was a kingdom, was an empire, not a kingdom, let alone being a state inside today's Osun, was an empire that stretches beyond Nigeria. So The Akobi or Okombi, this is why those that argue that his legacy is not in Yoruba land, so Okombi does not exist, they are right, because Okombi legacy is not a popular figure in Yoruba land, but that does not mean it doesn't exist. Even though those who said he exists also misinterpreted his timeline. He was never a son of Oduduwa. If Okombi was directly from Oduduwa, there would have been a land named after him across Southwest today. I hope I'm making sense. There is no figure in Yoruba land today that does not have a reference in terms of land, in terms of ancestry. Let any Yoruba person who tell us that Akobi exists, let them show us where his land is throughout Southwest of Nigeria, or even in Benin or in Ghana. They don't have it. It's all because Akobi does exist, but he's the ancestor of Oduduwa, which is King David, and his legacy evolves around Kush land, which the Pale Arab have overshadowed today. Why do you think the Pale Arab are trying to make Sudan unsettled? There are so many secrets within that Kush land. There are so many secrets, and that Kush land is what that will link that. The history of Kush land is what that will link Ile-Ife and Egypt together. Is the center. This is why they've hold that Kush land in ransom today. There is even argument that those that were buying, unaliving today were the original black people. Why those who are left in North Africa today are mostly a mixed race. There are so many conspiracies. Me, first King Komadaru, because there are so many lies about that place. They overshadowed it. So Akobi is also a deity, and that Akobi is the original name. That Akobi was what they refer to as Akobi in the Torah of the same year, and that Akobi was now the later renamed as Israel. So in a nutshell, Israel was never a name of a land, a territory, or a country. Neither was it even meant to be a country as we have it today. Leading to why historically, as far back as 700 years ago, the entire Middle East was never much livable. The settlers of that place were Philistines, and these Philistines were particularly people who dwell at the nearest region to ancient Egyptian colony. Most Middle East were barren land. It has a trade route of different nomadic. It was never a livable. But one way, after the Roman conquered, that is another political history, how the Roman overthrown the Philistine, not Palestine. They overthrown it, make it a new white nation. And we know by default how history goes. That in 14 May 1948 was when the European officially changed that annexed Philistine land to Israel land, because they wanted to detach the Africanism of that Akobi from the African people and wear the name. This is why the Bible refers to them as fake. They are fake Jew. They stole their identity and come up with different narratives that are far from the originality of the name. In 1948, they founded the place. They redesigned it to become a new Israel land. And we know for sure that those Europeans you see today, most of them can trace their ancestry back to what we know as Kazakhstan. They are Kazanians. And they also, between them and also the Persians, they became a mix. That is another entirely from the political ball game. This is what I'm saying. And we know Northeast Africa was what the land was. It was never in Middle East. So many conspiracies are hidden there. So collective European body, they form an Orthodox Jewish nation. This Orthodox Jewish nation, whereby they incorporated some of the pre-existing North African people who has been long ally of them. This is what I'm saying. Yoruba will say, "Ti ekuleti oba pani, tode ole pani." The European from the Roman, the Persian, they had ally already in Africa, which led to why their invasion was successful. Like in West Africa, what made the European invasion in West Africa, the transatlantic slave trade, was very successful because of their loyalty and incorporations of the Fulbe. They had the Fulbe with their ally. Even till today, the Fulbe were still the allies of those dominating West Africa, directly and indirectly, and it is by design. The Fulbe are the same people who were historically known as the Hyksos around the 1940. So they have different names. Sometimes you can refer to them as the nomadic. These are the people who understood the nooks and corners of Africa, who has always been the weapon of the aliens. Whoever is like, they know the map in and out, so it's easier for them the Europeans and the period Arab, to bargain with them to show them the way, because randomly it's never easier for a random person to jump into the continent of Africa, as big as he is, and become successful. They need the inner people, so they had to use the nomadic, who understand how the length and breadth of Africa is, and they are still using them today to perpetrate different kind of unthinkable acts. And so it has always been like that. And the Aksum, I don't want to mention, but these are the people who have had a long successful relationship with this invader, even long before the Roman invaded Africa, within the 320 and 360 through the Ezena, around the mid 4th century. They've always been an ally of the Greco-Roman by an interrelationship that long lasted. So when the Roman people successfully invaded North Africa and took over the entire Israel land or whatever they are doing there, they had to incorporate these people who were their ally into what we know as the Jewish Orthodox nation. So if you see different type of Jewish people, they are the collective people who destroyed the original black Jew in North Africa. And after the North Africa, this black Jew reverted back to their land of origin, which is West Africa. While those who impersonated their name, alongside those who still refer to them as, who still parade themselves as the new Jew, they are the very people which the Torah are addressing as synagogue of Satan. There are so many conspiracies. I just don't like to go deeper in people's tribe in North Africa. It will look as if I'm insulting them. Whatever they do, if you are intelligent enough, you will see how the whole conspiracy goes. So this is what I can basically talk about these Jews, the Judah, the Akobi, and the time of the Israelite. Whatever we are seeing today in the entire Middle East, Israel land, none of their culture, none of their practices, none of their appearances, none of their new way of life relates with what Israel means in ancient. As a matter of fact, the man known as Israel have no land, have no empire, have no country. They just pick the name to create their own whatever that they are doing there, trying to force themselves to be people of heaven. And you know what they are? The Gentile, the Jews, the fake Jews, synagogue of Satan. I don't want to talk much. So let me press the like button. Let me turn up the notification bell. Make your comment known below. Should in case you have more to add to this, please let us learn together, because my small brain, I can't be knowing everything. Me too, I'm reading and talking. It's not as if I'm an encyclopedia or an AI robot. I want to learn. Contribute to this topic and let me know what you know. Thank you, everyone. Press the like button. Let me share it. Turn off the notification bell. I will see you in my next video, everyone. Thank you and bye for now.